So you've just got yourself a drone and you want to learn how to make your holiday shots heaps better? Well, I've got 5 beginner tips to improve your shots regardless of the quality of your drone. So stay tuned. For our videos, we use the Mavic Mini version 1. It doesn't come with any of the bells and whistles that some of the other drones come with. So I've had to learn how to perform these shots manually. Now, what that means is I am a better operator of my drone than I perhaps would be. I know how to find better shots and it improves your overall experience. So before you even fly your drone, there's some things you should consider first. Number 1, where are you actually going to fly from? Some of these techniques require a little bit of finesse with the joysticks. So having a surface to be able to put your controller will dramatically help when it comes to pulling these shots off. Number 2, are there any obstacles in your way? Think about this, you're pulling off some awesome maneuver and then you run into a flagpole. So scout around what is actually in the area before you send your drone up so that you know what your obstacles are and how to avoid them when you're in flight. And number 3, what is going to be the focus of your flight? The best drone footage comes from having a focus. Even if you're going out there just for fun, having a focal point will improve the way you fly your drone. It will be more fun, your skills will improve, and your footage is going to improve out of sight by having that focus. Now that focus might be a bell tower or some sort of structure in the town that you're flying, or it might be people walking on the beach. But just remember, having that focus will just bring your footage together. The escape and reveal. This is probably going to be the first shot that you as a beginner are going to use. 1, because it's super easy to do, and 2, because it looks sick. You can affect it in post-production by speeding it up, slowing it down, doing all sorts of time warpy kind of things. It's really fun, really easy. What you need to do is center your subject in the shot on your remote. Then what you need to do is pull back slightly on the drone, have it coming back, and then as it's flying away from the subject, add a little bit of altitude to it so you're really coming up with it. Now remember, go slowly. Speed kills with a drone. The faster you go, the less stable the footage is going to be. So the slower you go, the smoother it will be. The overhead. What are we flying drones for if not to get a different look of the world than we get with our own 2 feet at ground level? The overhead's a really simple shot and it provides a different perspective for your videos and will often unlock geometric beauties that you just cannot see when you're at ground level. All you need to do for this is have your drone at a very high vantage point. Get your camera panned down to 90 degrees. And then what you need to do is line your shot up with what you've got in your visuals, and then you'll slowly just fly over your subject, fly over your focal point. Now remember, again, speed kills. You can always speed it up in post-production. So go slowly, make sure you capture the footage as it's intended to be seen. The crane. This shot is used to simulate crane cameras that are used in films still today. There are many variations on the way this shot can be done, but the most basic of these, and the one that you guys should learn first, is you'll have the drone approaching your focus. And then as you're approaching it, you'll lift up and keep going forward, and you'll eventually pan down and be looking directly over your subject. Now, in order to achieve this, you'll want to add grid lines to your remote control app. And depending on the drone you have, there are many various ways to get that done. But just go into settings and it should be easy enough to find grid lines to add there. Now, you want to use your diagonal grid lines on your remote control. Now, the very center of that, you want to keep that focused on the top of your focal point. You'll come in slowly. You'll slowly forward on the drone joystick. And then as you get that momentum going forward, start to lift up slowly on the altitude joystick. And then as you're going forward, keep the top of your focal point in that crosshair. So you'll want to start panning down as you're going forward. Now remember, as you're doing this, use slow but committed movements. There's nothing more obvious to anyone's eye that you're a beginner than jerky movements on the camera. So just commit to what you've done. You've always got the opportunity to come back and have another go if it doesn't feel right. Layering perspective. Now, As you become more familiar with your drone and the sites you go to fly your drone, you'll start to see opportunities for this particular shot. What you need is your focal point to be in the foreground, and then for other objects and other potential focal points to be distant in the background. To set this shot up, what you need to do is have your camera angle at a relatively high angle, say 60 to 90 degrees. And then you want to set your drone up above your subject and then away from your subject as well. And they should be about the same distance. So if you set it up 20 meters above, you want your drone to be about 20 meters away from the subject. Now the movements you're going to perform here are you simply just going to pull down on the joystick and lower your drone. As you're lowering your drone, you're panning the camera up. And what this should do is make your focal point in the foreground look like it's starting to move independently of the rest of the subjects in that frame. And it looks awesome. It looks amazing when you actually nail it. So for this particular shot at Gobbins Cliff, I actually want to be below 0 meters when I finish the shot. So when we get to 0 meters, I want to make sure I've got about 10 to 12 degrees left to pan up. And what you see with this shot is that's where it hits its stride. When it gets to about ground level and it starts to go below where you've launched the drone from, that's where you get some really great perspective and it really makes your shot pop. The orbit. There is no more satisfying shot in the arsenal than the orbit. When you pull off a perfect orbit, you feel absolutely spectacular. And the footage you get from this is awesome. It's absolutely amazing. Now, what is an orbit? Simply put, it's just your drone flying around your focal point and keeping your focal point to the center of the frame. In order to achieve this, you want to be panning your drone to the right while you're rotating it to the left, or vice versa if you want to go clockwise around that subject. Now, the way I achieve this is maybe not the way an advanced operator would achieve this, but it's perfect for beginners. Say I want to pan to the right, so an anti-clockwise turn around a subject. I will start with my focal point in the right-hand side of the shot. And by starting with the right-hand side of the shot, I will start panning over to the right. Just one joystick to start with. And then as my subject gets to the center of the frame, I will start to introduce rotation to the left. And then I'll increase that rotation to the left until I get to a point where it locks in on an orbit. And then you need to just hold that position for as long as you can. This is why you need a table sometimes to perform these shots. And you'll know when you've hit an orbit because your subject will just lock into the center of the frame, but there will be other things moving in the background. Very easy to tell when you're locked into an orbit. Now, one of the things you want to make sure of when you're doing an orbit is to ensure you've got an appropriate altitude. There's nothing more devastating than getting very, very close on a near perfect orbit and you're about to run into that tree or you're about to run into that flagpole and you just haven't taken that into account. So get your drone high enough and then that will enable you to do a full circle around the subject unimpeded. And there you have it, 5 shots to improve your holiday videos right now. Get out and start practicing. But what happens when we put all of this together? My journey from noob to mildly competent drone operator, you can click here to see a playlist of all my drone videos.